afternoon, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy days to attend today's webinar. My name is Rich Longo, and I'll be your host for another Flycast Partners presentation. Today's webinar is What's New with Workload Automation, presented by Joey Robichaux. Joey is a software consultant at BMC Software and has been in the IT industry for almost 40 years. He has worked intensively in pre- and post-sales implementations, mainly with Fortune 1000 clients. Joey has focused on corporate enterprise application implementations, workload automation, application lifecycle management, testing and monitoring, including end-user experience, quality assurance, server monitoring, network monitoring, load and functional testing, Java application performance, requirements, and change management, testing management, triage, and troubleshooting. That is a mouthful. Before we get started, Joey, let me introduce our organization here. Flycast Partners is here to deliver a seriously amazing IT experience. Founded and staffed by personnel that have many years of IT experience in IT space, we took the best ideas from these collective experiences and added the best components necessary to grow and become a leading value-added reseller in the North American IT market. We offer best-in-class implementation services and training in ITSM, ITAM, and workload automation spaces using ITIL best practices. Our professional services can easily scale up or down in order to meet the IT needs of any customer, regardless of size, complexity, or budgetary restrictions. We offer implementation services both on-site and remote, as well as training to reinforce your company's long-term IT success. Our ongoing administration and support service offerings will enable your organization to focus on your normal day-to-day operations, saving you both time and money. Please visit our website at www.flycastpartners.com or reach out to us and call us at 844-FLYCAST. That's 844-359-2278. And this is just one of many weekly webinars or bi-weekly webinars that we have here at Flycast. We encourage you to utilize our website for researching those industry white papers, training that is available from ITIL to ITSM tools, assistance with professional services, and feel free to utilize our new ITSM Solution Finder. Now, in today's presentation, when Joey is done showing you the good stuff, we're going to give you an opportunity to give a voice to the presentation. We will be taking all of your questions, as many as we can answer at the end of today's presentation, whatever we can fit in that 45-minute time period allocated. And if you want to stay over a little bit more, I'm sure Joey will be more than happy to answer your questions as well. So please type in your questions under the Q&A section on your WebEx, and we'll make sure that we read those questions off to Joey at the end and get the answers you've been looking for. And Joey, I have turned over controls over to you.
All righty, sounds good. I think I've got things projecting here. Well, hello, everyone. I certainly appreciate everybody showing up today. We're going to look at Control-M.
I don't see your screen yet, Joey.
Oh, you don't? Let me see.
No,
am I presenting it or not? Hold on a second. Share. Oh, yeah, I forgot to share the screen. That probably helps.
That's okay. There we go.
You seeing it now? Ah, there we go.
I see it now, sir. You're up.
Good deal. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about BMC's Control-M workload automation tool. I've got a short slideshow here. We're going to spend a little time on it, and then we're going to jump into the product just to try a couple things. And I'd like to just have you get an idea for what it's like to use Control-M and for what type of things you might expect to see out of Control-M. I'd also like to for you to get a feel for the difference between job scheduling and workload automation. A lot of people do job scheduling, not as many do workload automation, and there's a huge difference between the two. And we'll see that as we go along. So like Rich said, if you do have any questions, just please jot them down in that Q&A field, and we will get to that before the end of the session today. Let me go ahead and start off, if I can click the right key here. Okay. And I want to start off by thinking about a lot of different IT shops. I spoke to somebody this morning who they had homegrown scheduler they were using. They were using some native schedulers like for Cognos and DataStage, PeopleSoft. They had were using cron and Windows Task Scheduler on different machines. So at any point in time, if somebody asked them, what's running right now? What kind of jobs are running in production right now? This is kind of what it looked like to them. They didn't know. There was just a hodgepodge of stuff out there running. And in order to find out what was going on, they had to sign into different systems, which meant they had to have authentication credentials in the systems. They had to know how to get into the different systems. They had to know how to query them to find out what was going on. And even then they had to try to tie all this together because they're going to a number of different machines, a number of different applications. So very confusing, very difficult to answer. But yet these are critical processes that are running. Now, some of them are more critical than others, but this is your critical workload that people are running. What ControlM does for you is we take away that hodgepodge. It's an enterprise-wide tool. We can talk to any application. We can talk to any machine, any type of machine. ControlM gives you a very easy way to define what your workflow looks like. We can plot that out. We can create dependencies. Job schedulers tend to use time-based scheduling. So this job runs at 10, this one runs at 10:15, this one runs at 10:30. Those tend to be very wasteful because what happens if your job at 10 o'clock only runs for 5 minutes? Well, the next one's starting at 10:15, no matter what. So you got 10 minutes of dead space there. You multiply that by the number of jobs you're running, and you've got a huge amount of holes in your day. ControlM squeezes all that out. We get away from time-based scheduling and go into dependency scheduling. So we can say, as soon as this job finishes, I want to start these other jobs instead of waiting for particular times. That greatly improves your efficiency and your productivity. We can create dependencies across platforms and across environments. So we can have Windows jobs waiting on Linux jobs. We can have SQL Server and file transfers waiting on Cognos jobs or AS400 jobs. To ControlM, they're just jobs. We don't care what platform they're on. We don't care what type of thing they're running. So we'll give you an easy way to plan this out. We'll give you an equally easy way to monitor it, an enterprise-wide dashboard where you can see everything that's happening in your workflow across your entire enterprise, which makes it very easy to answer the question, what's running right now? Well, giving you an easy way to do that, that also presents its own challenges. Suppose you're running 20,000 jobs a day, and I show you a screen with 20,000 jobs on it. That is factually correct, but it's not giving you good information because it's just so much stuff to see at once. So ControlM offers different ways of doing monitoring that makes it so much more efficient and effective. And we'll see some of those in a second. Since we're watching what's running right now, that means we watched what ran yesterday and we ran the day before. So we know the history of your workflow. We know how your jobs normally perform. You not only can roll back to particular days to see what was happening maybe last week or something, but you can say things like, let me know if this job runs longer than it normally does. And I don't have to supply a number to define what normally is. ControlM figures that out for you because it watches this job all the time. It knows how long it normally takes. So we can tell you when it's 20% more than normal or maybe one standard deviation less than normal. Normal means different things at different times of the year as well. You have your weekend processing, your month-end processing, your quarter-end processing, your year-end processing. Those all probably take different amounts of time to run because of the additional workload. ControlM is aware of that, and we can apply the appropriate metric at the appropriate time to determine if things are abnormal or not. One final thing we can do with knowing your the history of your workload performance is we can do some what-if games. We can do some forecasting. We can say, well, what if I vary these few conditions, but everything else remains normal? What's going to happen to my workload? Am I going to hit my deadlines or not? So when the DBAs come in and say, look, we need to take this machine down for maintenance between 1 and 3, and this database is going to be unavailable between 2 and 4, and we're going to offload some processing onto another machine, which is going to make everything run a little bit slower. You can type all this in and say, okay, if I change all these things, but everything else remains normal, what's going to happen to my deadlines? So we can find that out the easy way rather than the hard way. Okay? Let me give you a little case study that's very common in a lot of IT environments. You've got a lot of workload running. You have a lot of jobs running. At some point, something fails. Somebody gets notified. Maybe an operator sees something. Maybe somebody gets an email or a trouble ticket. People get woken up. They start working on the issue. A little while later, something else fails. More people get involved. A little while later, something else fails. People get involved again. Just rinse and repeat. It's that same firefighting sequence that everybody in IT is so familiar with? Well, there are a couple of obvious issues with this. One is that you're reacting to situations. You're fighting the fires. You know, you're not getting ahead of the curve. You're staying behind things as they occur. But something maybe more important is that, do you really know how critical these jobs are when they fail? If it's a job that's not really critical to your business, is the most effective use of your time and resources at that moment to work on that issue? Or should you save those resources in case you need them later in a more critical application? What ControlM does for you, and this is one of the things that we started to realize as we had this enterprise-wide view and had visibility into everything, is that some things are more critical than other things. And we want to be able to pay special attention to those critical things. So in this case, we've got a job that must complete at a certain time in the morning. If it doesn't, all kind of terrible things are going to happen. The phones are going to ring, and people are going to be upset, and everybody's going to be in trouble. Okay? So we'll point to this critical job. ControlM will then look at it. We have something called Batch Impact Manager. We'll look at that critical job and then start to chart the backflow. We'll plot out which jobs are necessary in order to hit this deadline, because not all of these jobs fall in this critical path. So everybody here with a blue star is in the critical path. They must run successfully in a timely manner in order to hit this deadline. Have other jobs that they're not starred. They're not in the critical path. You notice the jobs that failed, these 3 red jobs, they're not in our critical path. So if we got excited and spent resources working on these things at that time, that may not have been the best use of our resources. We would have been better served reserving our resources just in case we had any issues with our critical processes. So we'll get rid of the ones that aren't important. Looking at the critical processes only, ControlM is watching these. And we might notice that at 2:30 in the morning, we're having an issue with a job that's running too long. We know it's running too long because we know how long it normally runs. ControlM figures that out for you. So we can alert you at 2:30 in the morning, not that you've missed your deadline, but that you are in danger of missing your deadline if things don't work out. So at 2:30 in the morning, we might get somebody involved with looking at this. Who are we going to get involved? Well, maybe some of these guys who are available because we didn't have to wake them up because to work on things that were not as critical. So this lets us put our resources where they're most needed and to treat holistically rather than individual jobs, our workflow. When we create this critical path, these are the things that are important to achieve some critical business service. So we'll give this a name. We might call it something like billing or payroll or shipping or inventory, some critical business service name that we want to key on. So rather than monitoring our entire workflow, which may be hundreds or thousands of jobs, rather than looking at those hundreds of thousands of jobs, we may instead only look at a small list of business services. I was talking to a customer the other day who was running 25,000 jobs a day. When he looked at his business services that he'd had defined, he only had 13 business services. And that's going to be common for most people. You may be running a lot of jobs, but your critical services that you care about, there's probably only a small handful of those. If you think about it, when a manager calls up and says, you know, how are things going, he doesn't care about job ABC 1, 2, 3. What he cares about is, are the bills going to be printed in time? Are the paychecks going to be cut? Are the trucks going to be loaded in time? Are my critical business services that I have to achieve, are they going to happen in a timely manner? Okay, that gives you a much easier way to monitor your workflow by looking at it in terms of business services rather than looking at them in terms of jobs. And let me bounce off for a second, and I'll show you what I mean there. I'm going to jump into the real product itself. In here, I'm looking at 814 jobs that are running on our demo system. And I can move this little window around, and I can see all 800 jobs, and I can query them and find out information, but this is just a lot of stuff to me. I find this difficult to look at and get any useful information out of. But if I looked at it in terms of services, here are my services I care about. And I can see, okay, I've got to.
Hey, Joey, your sound is cutting out in and out a little bit for some reason. I don't know if your mic's moving or not. Just so you know.
Okay, thank you. It probably was. I think I got my hands caught in the wire there. So please let me know if that happens again. I'll try to address that. Okay, thank you. So I'm looking at a business service. I can drill into this business service and find out more information about it if I wanted to. So I can look at it in detail. But I found a much easier way to get to it by looking at the services. So with Control-M, we do encourage you to monitor your workflow in terms of services as opposed to just a bunch of jobs that are running. You certainly can do it this way, but you might find it a little more meaningful and a little more easier to use by looking at things in terms of services. Okay, let me pop back over here, and I'm going to pick up my slide again. Now, we can look at this information. This is our GUI showing you these business services. We don't really license the GUI, so you can install it as many places as are appropriate as you feel the need to, but there's other ways to get this information. We have something called SelfService, which lets you look at the same information through a URL, through a browser. Or you can load up an app on your iPad, your iPhone, or an Android device and get to the same information. In fact, it's a free app. You can go to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Android or whatever they call it, and download, look for Control-M Self-Service, download it, install it on your device. We have a demo system that's hooked to it, and you can play with it if you feel like, just to get a feel for it. So the type of information you need to see, whether at the high level, where I just want to see my services, or at a detail level, where I want to see the jobs within those services, and maybe react with those jobs. Depending on the users, we can assign particular rights and permissions. So some technical users, we may give them the rights to rerun jobs, or kill jobs, or change the status of jobs. Other users may just be a look but don't touch type thing. Okay? So the type of things that they might want to do that's appropriate for them to do, we do supply within our self-service feature. So why you might want to consider Control-M? First off, I always worry about painting myself into a corner with using an application and finding out, wait a minute, it doesn't do this. This is what I need to do, and I don't find that until way down the road. With Control-M, you don't worry about that. It doesn't matter what type of hardware you're running on. It doesn't matter what type of application you're running. We can handle it. So with one tool, one GUI, regardless of what type of hardware, what type of application, we can mix and match them all. And if there's something out here that you run that we don't have, maybe you have a custom homegrown thing that you use, homegrown application that you use, we have an integration tool where you can create your own integration. It's very simple to use, drag and drop type stuff, and have Control-M integrate and work with that particular application. We can mix and match things, so we can mix and match hardware types, mix and match application types. Very easy to do. To define workflows, it's all graphical. You start with a workspace, you grab a job type. We got about 30 different job types that come with the product. You can create your own job types for your own applications if you need to, and drag and drop it onto a workspace. You configure it, and then drag and drop the next jobs in your workflow. Draw arrows between the job types to show the dependencies. Jobs later on down the list are not going to run until the jobs above them finish completely, finish okay. So it's very easy to build a workflow. There's no coding involved. It's all just graphical drag and drop type stuff. Something new we've come up with, we've had users describe a particular situation that they have. From the point that a user says, hey, I need to define a workflow. I need to describe it to my developers so that they can build it. So I'm going to use my requirements document. I'm going to write out the specs. I'm going to write out what I want them to do. And so I'm going to write that down as efficiently as I can. But since I'm human, I'm going to leave something out. I'm going to make a mistake somewhere between my concept and my writing it out. We give those specs to a developer, and he's going to say, well, I'm going to do the best I can to read this and interpret it. But since he's human, he's going to miss some things as well. He's going to misinterpret some things. And he comes out with a finished application. The user looks at it and says, well, you know, that's nice, but it's not quite what I want. I know it's what I said, but it's not what I meant. And you go through this back and forth iterative process that we all know from the IT world, you know, where somebody writes specs and somebody tries to interpret that. You finally get something that works, and you give it to operations, and they say, oh, no, this isn't going to go. These naming conventions are not what we're used to. We don't understand what this is. You've used a weird word here. It doesn't fit with our conventions. So then you start all over again to try to fix things up. And the problem is everybody speaks different languages. The user speaks one language. He's writing down words. The developer speaks another language. He's using Control-M to try to develop things. The operators speak another language because they expect to see things in a certain format, in a certain manner. What our Workload Change Manager does, it's a browser-based tool that users can use. It's designed for users to use. but it looks a lot like the tool that the GUI tool that the developers use. Users use the same drag and drop procedure to define their workflows. Okay? If there are things that they don't understand, they can write some notes and say, hey, I want to run something, but I don't know quite how to do it, but this is what I want to achieve. It'll attach those notes to that particular job definition. He can now he can do this, but he can't run it. He can define it, but there's no way he can run it. So he can't do truncate database and run it and mess everything up. What he'll do instead is submit it. That submission will, a developer will then be notified, hey, somebody just submitted a proposed workflow for you. The developer will pick it up, or maybe his supervisor will see it and he'll assign it to somebody. A developer will pick that up, look at it, take ownership of it. He'll be in the GUI at this point where he can do things. He may sanity check it. We have a validation feature where we can see if the users have made any errors. We have site standards that can be applied so that the workflow is developed in a manner in which operations expect it to be developed. Validate it, check it, maybe run it, test it, make changes if necessary. At some point, he says, okay, this is good. I'm ready to move it on. He may then promote it to from a sandbox to a development environment. And maybe another developer will get notified, hey, we've just had something new move to development. He'll pick that up, maybe test it, move it to user acceptance testing. It'll then go through the user acceptance testing, and maybe at that point, we'll promote it on to production. Okay? Now, whenever you have a promotion, there are quite often some changes that need to be made. So suppose in development, I'm using my development databases, and they all have the name DEV underscore some name. Okay? So when we promote that to prod, we need to change those names from DEV to PRD underscore. We can define promotion rules, sets of promotion rules. Those modifications will be made automatically when we do that promotion so that the workflow is in the proper format for the environment in which it's developed. Our original user who asked for something like this found that it was taking them about 2 weeks from the time that the user would start writing his specs, to the time that the developer actually was able to complete the application to everybody's satisfaction. After putting in Workload Change Manager, that 2 weeks went down to 2 hours. So this can greatly speed your application development and greatly improve the quality of your application since we have the site standards and since everybody's speaking the same language. Another new thing with Control-M is, I had mentioned earlier, we give you the ability to create your own job types, your own job templates. It's a very easy drag and drop type thing where we say, okay, we want to interact with your homegrown application. Okay, how do I execute your application? How do I check on the progress? What do I do if I want to kill it? And how do I get the output? Okay, those are the things we need to know. So those are the things you would define to us. You then get to build a form that you want us to use. So maybe some things are just free forms where things people enter in. Maybe there's a pick list that somebody has to pick from a set of approved values. You can define what those things are. Maybe there's a connection profile. Connection profiles are kind of unique within Control-M. Whenever you're working with an application like Cognos or PeopleSoft or databases or what have you, you quite often have to connect with that application and authenticate yourself. So maybe you have to define a port, maybe you have to define whether it's SSL or not, maybe you have to define an ID and a password, maybe you have to define an instance name, whatever you have to define in order to connect to that particular application, we put that in a connection profile. This is defined by an administrator. So we have an administration tool that only the administrator has access to. So normal users don't get to know what the IDs and passwords are. They don't have to worry with how to connect to the application. All they need to know is which connection profile do I need to use. Then when they're defining their application, they want to connect to the database to run an SSIS job, they just need to know what connection profile to use. They're automatically connected, and they can then select what type of things they want to do within that particular application. We do have a set of reports that come with Control-M. We're always watching what's happening. So from an audit viewpoint, we can always tell you what happened to what, when, and why, who did it. They tend to be high-level, general type reports. If you have a specific reporting need that does not come in our set of reports, we do publish our schema. So we encourage our users to create their own reports if they need to for their special needs, and many of them do. Whatever reporting tool is appropriate in the user's environment, that'll work just fine with our published schema. Okay. Again, we'll always be able to tell you who did what and why. This answers a lot of questions a lot of times. Let me tell you about our architecture. Control-M is a true three-tier application. Okay? At the highest level, we have what we call the Enterprise Manager. He is basically our master database of everything we know, along with all the logic to control that. When you're using our GUI, when you're using our self-service to get information from Control-M, you're talking to the Enterprise Manager. Okay? That Enterprise Manager can also talk to a Control-M server. That Control-M server is responsible for one or more Control-M agents or agentless machines. Okay? These machines are the machines you have right now that are doing work. So they'll continue to do work, run jobs after you implement Control-M. The way the scheme works is that every day, at some time that you designate as the beginning of the day, the Control-M servers wake up. They go to the Enterprise Manager and say, hey, I'm responsible for these machines. What do they need to do today? The Enterprise Manager collects that information, gives it back to the server. The server then distributes that information to the appropriate machines and says, this is what I need you to do today and when I need you to do it. I'm going to go back to sleep. Y'all go ahead and take care of things. Let me know if there's anything I need to know. So from that point on, the machines run themselves. If there's anything they need to pass back, maybe some data or maybe some dependency information, they'll send that back to the server and he'll distribute it to the appropriate place. So that's how we're able to let a Unix machine be dependent on something that may be happening on a Tandem box or an AS400 or something like that. That's also how the Enterprise Manager can see everything that's happening underneath it. So whether it's a mainframe, whether it's Unix boxes, window boxes, or maybe you're expanded into a large enterprise where you may be running thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of jobs internationally, globally. It's still the same Enterprise Manager talking to all of those guys. So at any point, anything that's underneath this Enterprise Manager, Control-M can see, can report on, can put in services, can issue alerts, and can show you on the dashboard. So this is how we're able to maintain that enterprise-wide view. And it's very lightweight as well, because really the machines are still doing the same work. They only talk upwards when it's necessary for them to do so. There's not really any polling going on back and forth while this is happening. So it's very resource friendly, it's not resource intensive, and very network friendly. There's not unnecessary traffic going on. It's also the same Control-M that may be running 100 or 200 jobs in one environment, can be the same implementation, can scale up and run hundreds of thousands of jobs. You don't have to reinstall Control-M or put in a heavier version. It's really just a licensing issue to run more jobs. Most jobs I've ever heard of running on a Control-M is about 3 million. The fewest is like 75. So that's the same Control-M that's handling both of those. With version 9 of Control-M, as you need to upgrade, as we come up with fix packs, BMC issues a fix pack for Control-M about every 2 to 3 months as we issue enhancements and things like that. You can push those fix packs out automatically with our configuration tool, so you don't have to go to individual machines to do reinstallations or installations or what have you when you do need to make changes. Regardless of whatever somebody may have in place right now, we have a conversion utility that'll handle pretty much everything. So we make it very easy to convert from existing implementations to Control-M. And in fact, about every day and a half, we're converting a competitor over to Control-M. Control-M is now the market leader in workload automation. We have more market share than anyone else, and there's a good reason for that. One of them is our support organization. We offer 24-hour a day, 365 days a year telephone support. As part of your maintenance, you're always going to be able to get somebody on the phone when you're having an issue, no matter when it is, no matter what it is. Reasons to consider Control-M, we have a bunch of neat reasons, but probably the most important one is not what we say, but it's what other people say about Control-M. In the Gartner Magic Quadrant for workload automation, we have led this quadrant, this particular evaluation for 13 years. They only did it for 13 years, and we've led it every year. If you're a software vendor, you want to be up here in this top right-hand corner. BMC is up there with Control-M, and we're kind of lonely out there. Now, one of the reasons we're up here is that this is a major product at BMC. We get a significant portion of our revenue from it. We put an equally significant portion of that revenue back into the product. We have more developers. We've got about 300 developers dedicated full-time to Control-M. That's more developers than all of these other guys all combined. This is a major product, and we put the work out in it to maintain this position. ControlM is not a new product. It's been out nearly 30 years, and we've evolved with the workload automation field. We understand it very well, and we intend to maintain our position there. So I'm going to go ahead and get the actual demo ready. And before I do that, let me just pop into the thing here to see if we do have any questions that we might want to look at. And nothing here yet. So let me go ahead and jump into the product. So this is the ControlM GUI right here. Depending on what you're trying to do, we've split it into different categories that we call domains. So if you're trying to build a workflow, we have a planning domain. If you want to monitor your existing workflow, we have a monitoring domain. If you want to look at the history of what happened in the past, we have a history domain. If you want to look at what may happen in the future, do some forecasting, we have a forecasting domain, and so on like that. You may have noticed as I went between the different domains, this ribbon bar at the top changes. So we only show you the functionality that's appropriate to what you're trying to do at the time. That's one of the reasons we can keep ControlM easy to use. We don't try to flood you with functionality. Let's go ahead and just build a workflow real quick so you can see what's involved here. I'm going to start with a blank workspace, and I'm going to grab a job type. I'll just grab a batch file, an operating system type job. Now that it's in here, I can name it. I can give it a job name. I can put it in a particular folder to make it easy to find. So I might put all my billing jobs in a billing folder. Okay, I can give it a job name. I can give it a job description. If I'm using Workload Change Manager, I can use site standards here if I want to. Among the site standards are the ability to make something required or not. When I build site standards for a user, I always make the description mandatory because I think it's important to be able to see that instead of OS job, this is a ETL for initial billing. Okay, and of course I misspelled half the words there, but you get the idea. So an operator looking at this doesn't have to figure out what OS job number 1 means, and I probably should change that job name as well, but instead can look at the description to see what's going on. What do I want to run? Well, this is a batch level thing, so it's a command line thing. So I can type in a script name, I can type in a command, or I can put in an embedded script where I just define the script within ControlM. So I might want a dir c : and a host name. And this is a Windows batch file, so I need to tell it that it's a batch file. Okay. Where do I want to run it? Here's a list of all the agents and agentless machines that ControlM knows about. So I can pick out which machines I want to run this on, or groups of machines. We can group things. Here's a Linux group. Here's another group here. So I could select that, and then this embedded script is going to run on every machine within that group. Okay. Who do I want to run as? Because some users have different rights and permissions than others. Applications and sub-applications. This gives me an ability to further categorize this. So maybe this is billing for subscribers, and maybe this is subscribers in the East region. Okay, so now I can come back later and say, show me all the jobs running for subscribers. Show me all the jobs running in the Eastern region. Show me all the jobs running for subscribers in the East region, or show me all the billing jobs for subscribers, or in any mix and match here. Makes it a lot easier to view our work. We can also pre-establish filters as well. So we may have users coming in, maybe with our self-service tool. Look, they want to see their jobs. We may define them as saying, give them rights and permissions. Yeah, they can come in, but they can only see billing jobs that are subscribers in the Eastern region. Okay, so they only see the things that they're supposed to see. I can enter in additional information if I need to. I can feed it variables. I like to make documentation a requirement as well. So I might have a document, maybe a URL, maybe an internet somewhere, and I can type in some URL. When they're looking at this and they say, gee, I want more information, they can click a documentation tab, and the contents of this documentation will appear in that tab. Okay, so I've defined what I want to run. Now I need to tell it when I want to run it. Maybe I want to run it every day. Maybe I want to run it on certain days of the month, maybe on certain days of the week. Maybe I want to use calendars. I can define calendars if I want to. So I might define, we've got European holidays, quarter ends, pay days, whatever those might be. So we can use calendars if we want to. We can also use some advanced scheduling. So I can do things like, I want to run on the 1st and 15th of every month, unless that's a weekend. In that case, I want to run on the preceding Friday. So we can get really fancy in there. We can use regular expressions if we need to. But that's kind of how we do the scheduling. So we can define what we want to run, when we want to run it. That's job scheduling. Here's workload automation. What do you want to do after the job runs? Because when we run a job, a lot of things can happen. It can fail. It can end, and we don't care whether it failed or not. It can end successfully. Maybe it ended with a certain OS completion code. Maybe it's executed a certain number of times in a row, or rerun a certain number of times in a row. Maybe it ran okay, but didn't generate any output. Maybe it's failed a certain number of times in a row, or maybe the output contains some word or phrase that we want to key on. If any of those things happen, what do you want to do? Well, we might want to notify somebody, open a trouble ticket, send an email. Let's do this. Suppose this is a file transfer, and the file transfer fails. And your operator calls you and says, hey, your file transfer just fails. 90% of the time, what are you going to tell them? Hey, it's a file transfer. It's half black magic, half voodoo. Just rerun the job. Maybe it'll run the next time. So you can do this instead of having to do this manually. Let the computer take care of it for you. If it fails, rerun the job. 90% of the time, it's going to work out okay. We can do multiples here. What happens if it fails again? What if a rerun didn't work? So let's say rerun the job if it fails, but if it fails twice in a row, then I want to do something else. Well, maybe we just happen to know that if a rerun fails, most of the time that's because clear directory. It's because the target directory is full. So let's define another job, and they would define this within Control-M. We'll put it in the utility folder, and it's called clear directory. It clears out the target directory. But we don't want to run it all the time. We only want to run it in those few occasions when we think it's necessary. So we'll let Control-M order this job for us, select to run it for us. We don't have to put it in our regular scheduling. It only runs when Control-M thinks it's appropriate. Okay. So what happens if okay? So we tried that. We reran it. We cleared the directory. It still failed. Number of failures 3. Well, at this point, we're going to do something else. Maybe we'll run some diagnostics and route that output of those diagnostics to a developer and open a trouble ticket and send them an email that says, hey, we tried everything, all the normal stuff, still failed. Have at it. Here's the information you need. But what we've done is we've gotten the operators out of the loop. We've gotten the phone calls out of the loop. And we've gotten all the normal things that might take care of it out of the loop. So if we have issues, maybe 95% of the time we can resolve those issues automatically just by applying the things that might be on an operator run sheet rather than just having operators look at it from the very beginning. And let me stick another job in here just for the heck of it. In fact, let me just do a cut. No, I do it like this. I just want to show you how we do a dependency. That's it. That's the magic there. So this might be on a Unix box. This might be on an AS400. We can make them dependent on each other. I would only put time-based dependencies on this very first one. So this has to run at a certain time, a certain day, a certain whatever. After that, this job is going to run whenever that one finishes. Okay. So I don't need to put times on this, guys. If I'm using Batch Impact Manager to manage this as a service, if any of these run longer than they normally do, I'll automatically be notified. Okay. So Control-M does that sort of work for me. So I want to ask you 2 questions. First, have you noticed what programming, what coding I had to do to accomplish this? Everything's graphical. You don't have to code in Control-M. You draw pictures, you draw arrows, you configure the things that you typed in, but you don't have to code. Now, having said that, if you really want to code, you could have. We do have a full set of command line utilities and a Java API that can be used in the background if you want to. You don't have to use those, but if you do want to use them, the coding language you can use is anything you want to. As long as it can execute a command shell, execute a command line command, or it can call a Java API, you can use that. So you can use, Bourne shells, WinBatch, PowerShell, VBScript, whatever's appropriate, as long as you can call either of those executables. You can code within Control-M. Most of the time, it's not necessary. I've seen a few very extreme cases where their requirements had painted them in such a corner, the only way out was to do a little bit of coding with some batch files, and you can do that within Control-M. The other thing is, did you get a feel? I know nobody will remember how I did any of this, but did you get a feel for the level of effort that was involved in making this happen? One of the things we pride ourselves on is the ease of use in Control-M. I had a demo I had to do the other day where somebody was converting from one application to Control-M with one competing scheduler. So I went to Google and I said converting from, I'm not going to say the name, XYZ to Control-M. And the first 3 pages that turned up, reasons why people did that, every single reason, every single thing on those 3 pages was ControlM is easier to use, easier to use, easier to use. I was expecting to see, oh, it had this functionality, it had this feature, it did file transfers better. You know, no, none of that came up. It was all the ease of use. So ease of use is kind of important. You know, you get productive very easily. You can learn ControlM very easily. If you're a brand new user, you click this guy right here. We have the training videos built into the product. This is how I learned ControlM. I went through these little videos, and within 10 minutes, I was building workflows. Not hard to learn, not hard to use. And that's about it that I wanted to go through on the demo, just to have you get a little flavor, a little feel for what's involved there. Let's pop over to the chat window, see if we have anything, Rich.
We actually do have our first question. Actually, Scott asked it towards the beginning, but Scott asks, we are currently running ASG's Zeek, ZOS, and Xena server-based. What is or are the equivalent products with ControlM, i.e. are these 2 separate products? We're looking for an integrative server solution without the huge expensive cost of the MF component.
Gotcha, gotcha. Within ControlM, it's the same product. We don't have a separate product for mainframe. It's a separate agent, if you will. Basically, on a mainframe, it acts as both a control server and an agent at the same time, but it sits underneath the same enterprise manager that your distributed applications would, which is kind of neat because now from your enterprise manager, from one GUI, you not only can see what's happening in your mainframe, but you can see what's happening on the distributed side. Over here, we have the same thing. I've got both mainframe and distributed. This is a mainframe right here, and we're running jobs here, and we can look over the enterprise manager to see the information, see the status, and build workflows for a mainframe here.
Okay, and another thing that has come up is tool consolidation. I'm not quite sure what that means, but being able to consolidate all their tools.
Okay, so and I'm assuming you mean like you've got maybe some cron jobs and some task scheduler jobs, and you know maybe some competitors and maybe some homegrown stuff. That's no problem with ControlM. Our conversion tool can read pretty much whatever you have out there, or at least certainly the major players. We convert those directly into ControlM workflows and pull that into ControlM. In fact, the conversion tool can even load them automatically into ControlM. I'd like to say you're done at that point. Actually, you're not, because there are things you can do in ControlM that you can't do in like cron that you probably want to take advantage of. So, for example, cron is all time-based scheduling. You probably want to change that once you get into ControlM. Cron has no ability to do dependencies. So you'd probably want to take advantage of dependencies within ControlM. So you'd have some tweaking to do, but we can get all of your work within ControlM so you can start working with it.
Okay, and any other questions that anyone has, please go ahead and type those in the Q&A section, and we'll be happy to go ahead and get those done for you. I do have another question here in regards to maintenance and server solution with only server solution to control both work schedules. It's mainframe and server solution with only I guess that they're talking about this solution. I'm not understanding that question. So if you want to elaborate on that, whoever asked that would help.
And maybe I'll just meander a little while they're typing that. Maintenance as far as upgrades go, we have a new service pack or something like that. You don't need to bring production down to install service packs. That's all automatic. We can handle that for you, so you can do that type of maintenance while your normal production is running. If you do
here's a question about cost and budget too, by the way. I'll let you go ahead and finish your answer. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you do need to temporarily bring things down, so like we have a maintenance window where we need to suspend things, we do have the ability to do that, to say suspend all job submissions for a particular period, or because of a certain condition. Maybe we've got utilization so high that we want to temporarily suspend things until things slow down a little bit. We can let ControlM handle all of that for you. Okay, and you said you had a question on, was it?
Yeah, Jerry, they're concerned about, Jerry is concerned about pricing for their budget, being able to stay within budget as far as the tool is concerned, and I guess is looking for how this tool is actually sold.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the licensing. We like to only charge you for what you use. So it's kind of a value-based licensing. It's like I went out to buy a new car and it has all these little features, and stuff, but I don't use any of them. So I'd rather just pay for the things that I use and not worry about the other things. Within ControlM, you can license based only on the number of jobs that you run, unique tasks that you run. So you may have 10,000 tasks defined, but on any day, you never run more than 150 of them. We'll only license you for those 150 jobs that you run, unique jobs that you might run on any particular day. I know I said that I know of a customer of 3 million jobs. I don't want to make it sound like ControlM is only a high-end type tool. We've got many customers who are running only a couple of hundred jobs. So pricing-wise, we can fit it within pretty much any budget. And we're only going to charge you for what you use, not for excess functionality that you don't use.
Okay, and I don't have any other questions right now. We did good. That was quite a few questions that we had there. Any other questions that anyone has, please feel free to type them. We'll go ahead and spend the next couple minutes trying to answer something for you, anything that you'd like to know. Are there any other new features? Let me ask you a question, Joey. Any other new features in this latest version of ControlM that everyone should be excited about?
Yeah, one thing that I really liked a lot, we talk about high availability, failover, high availability type stuff. We've always done that with ControlM, but we tend to say whatever tool you're using right now for high availability, continue to use that. ControlM can go ahead and work with that. So if you've got clustering, we'll work with clustering. If you've got Oracle replication database, we'll work with that. But that means you have to have that other tool in place. A lot of people have that tool in place. Some people don't. They don't have a high availability solution. So we're telling them, go out and buy a solution and then we'll work with it. With the new version, we have it built into the product. So if you don't have a solution in place, ControlM can do that failover, that high availability for you. Now, having said that, if you do have a solution in place, I would recommend you go ahead and use that one because you understand it. It's the one that everybody's familiar with. You have knowledge about that in-house. But we'll work either way, either with what you have or what you don't have by giving you the high availability. Another thing we have that's neat in version 9 is an automatic promotion facility. The Workload Change Manager where users can create their own workflows and move it to a development or a test came out a little while ago, but we didn't have a convenient way to do the promotion from one version to the other. It was a manual process where you had to export and import things. In version 9, we now have a promotion built into the product. We'll promote things from one environment to the other. And by the way, with ControlM licensing, you can install as many environments as you want to. It's not part of the license, but we don't care. Go ahead and put in a dev and a prod and a sandbox. We're still going to license you on the number of jobs you run in a day. So we don't license the enterprise managers at all. So our new promotion facility handles that promotion and also handles the logistics involved in doing that promotion. Changing variables, changing database names, changing things like that. Those are two that jump out at me. Yep.
Okay, and it looks like we have another question from Scott. He wants to reiterate the ZOS Zeek component is very expensive. We have only 50 to 100 jobs left running on our mainframe per day. How would the cost compare in ControlM versus Zeek in that case?
ControlM, from my understanding, we license the number of jobs. Okay, so if you're running 100 mainframe jobs, we'll license 100 jobs. Okay, so whether you're running 100 distributed or 100 mainframe, they're just jobs to us. So I think cost-wise, you're going to find that very friendly.
All right. And here we go. Let's see. He has another question. High watermark, what if we have 200 every quarter? And I think you basically just answered that. It's just based on the number of jobs.
Yep. So, yeah, we will take your high watermark through throughout the last 365 days.
And Scott, if you'd like more information on this, what we can do is I can get one of our representatives to actually talk with you, answer a lot of your questions that you have, as well as we can also get you a private demo of the tool, et cetera, so that it's for your individual organization. And that applies to anyone who's on this. I do all the time. I welcome anybody who has questions or demo to please go ahead and rich.longo, L-O-N-G-O, partners.com. That's rich, R-I-C-H .L-O-N-G-O, partners.com. And I will make sure that we get someone to you and answer your questions and provide you with the demo for your individual organization. Any other questions? If you don't feel like emailing, you can simply pick up the phone, call 844-FLYCAST. It's 844-359-2278, and we can answer you that way as well. Joey, I think we have actually run over on our time, and I don't see any other questions in there for us. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we're done for the day, and I'm going to thank you for your time, Joey. Very good presentation.
My pleasure.
And
thank you very much.
You're welcome. And for our audience, I definitely want to thank everyone who took time out of their day to attend today's Flycast Partners webinar. Remember, you can email me, rich.longo@flycastpartners.com. We will get your questions answered. We'll get you the demo, whatever it is that you would like. We'll get that taken care of for you. Thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks.